Welcome, fellow seekers of challenge and triumph, to the SufferSooner podcast. Join us on a journey where ordinary souls embark on extraordinary endeavors. From the relentless grind of gravel to the punishing gauntlet that is triathlon, we've tasted our fair share of suffering. So fellow endurance warriors, let's lace up our shoes, strap on our goggles, and dive headfirst into the challenge, knowing that with every step, stroke, and pedal forward, we grow stronger together. All right, welcome to episode 28. We're going to call this one Adventures in Short Course Racing. So I think, Danny, this will be coming up, will be a couple of your first ever short course races.
Weird.
Danny's only done a half and a full. I've done many a short course racing when I started out, and then I figured, that stuff's too hard. And I wanted to go and do halves and fulls. So, and I do say that it's hard. It's a different kind of hard. It's basically putting yourself in a very uncomfortable situation for 1 to 2 hours. Because the short course stuff is over within a couple of hours, and whereas the longer stuff, it's like you get some mild discomfort for a lot longer time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
We always make this sound so enjoyable. Like, let's go out and punish yourself for a couple hours, but if you want to do it a little longer and just punish yourself a little less, you should do the long stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this is this is my first sprint distance, which is kind of funny because most people, I think most normal people, would just start out like at the sprint level, and then they work their way up to an Olympic, and then maybe a half, and then a full. And yeah, I didn't do it that way. I kind of went the other way around. Used the half to get ready for a full, and then now coming back to the sprint. It's weird. I'm not nervous about it at all. But we haven't been training for this. This is just something we threw this triathlon on the calendar. It's a great event. We've volunteered at it several years in the past, and so now to go out and do a short course, having not trained for it, I'm a little nervous, to be honest, because I'm like, gosh, at what point will I puke? Is it going to be 20 minutes in, or is it going to be 45 minutes in? So I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think we were talking this weekend, and on our last group ride, I was like, well, if I can make it to the finish line without throwing up, I'll call that a win. Yeah, if I throw up right after the finish line, that's okay. Yeah. Because you have to, and I'm not saying like, oh, you should throw up every single time, but you really need to put in the effort to, there are some people that just want to finish it. Totally fine, totally respectable. Yep. I can't do that. I wish I could. I put that bib number on, and it's race time. So I just go as hard as I can for as long as I can on a sprint. So, and it's just, that's the way it is. So me and Danny, we're going to do the sprint triathlon up here, our local sprint triathlon. Usually a sprint is about a half-mile swim, 12-mile bike, and a 5K or 3.1 mile run on the end. So, it's 0.75 kilometers, 20-kilometer bike, and a 5K at the end. So it differs. Some shorten the swim, some make it a little bit longer, but it just kind of roughly falls in. Like, the thing with sprint tries is, sometimes it's up to the race director on the distances. It has to fall within parameters, especially for if it's going to be a USAT sanctioned event. So like, it has to fall within, a certain amount of the swim, bike, and run. So there is some short course sprint triathlons that, maybe have a longer swim, but the bike's a little bit shorter. So it's like that.
It's interesting. We were scoping this one out, and I think the bike for this event is just a little over 11 miles, something like that. And I'm going 11 miles. Like, I'm not even warmed up in 11 miles. Like, how many times have been on rides, and like, my legs don't come around until we're 2 hours into the ride. And then finally you're like, oh, I can ride it now. It's great. My legs woke up. So 11 miles is going to be weird because you come out of the swim, 500 meter swim. And then I got to go like basically do a, full on VO2 max effort or a threshold effort to get to the 11 miles. Like, and I hope my legs are ready for that, because that's going to be some fun right there. So.
Yeah. So, the biggest thing I always see, especially amateurs and newer people to this distance, is that the warm up in this is key. Like you have to get warmed up before you start the race, because like in most longer distance, like half Ironman and Ironman, like Ironman, I just treat the swim as the warm up. So I get kind of loose before we jump in the water and swim, but the swim is my warm up for the rest of the day, because I'll start relatively slow, comfortable. I'll start building into my pace. And you, with a full Ironman, you have almost, you have 2.4 miles, or basically, almost 4 kilometers before you're done swimming. So it's a long swim, and so you just that's your warm up for the rest of the day. When you're talking 750 meters, 500 meters, that's just a warm up for my swim workout. and we're talking, we're gonna race that. So so we the key here is you definitely have to show up to the sprint and Olympic distances warmed up and ready to go. Otherwise, you are just gonna have a bad time. And I've done that. There's pictures of me floating around of when I didn't warm up and I looked like I was going to throw up after the swim.
I think I've seen a few of those. Yeah, for me, I'm such a terrible swimmer. The 500-meter swim, like that's going to be my warm up, because I'm so efficient in the water. My heart rate's going to be 170,000 beats per minute, and we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So, but no, you're right. I think it's going to be really interesting to come out of the water and have to jump on the bike for such a short amount of time. Push that hard, try to push that hard threshold, slightly above threshold effort, and then go right into a 5K and rail that too. And it's to your point, not everybody has again, you don't have to treat it this way, but we do like to suffer sooner, and that's just the way it is. So I think we're gonna have some fun this weekend. And I don't know, man, like I said, it's gonna be, I'm not really nervous about it, but it's just a different level of intensity that's not sure I'm quite ready for, but we'll see. It's gonna be
we don't really train this. We train for these longer events, and we just so it's the whole idea of doing something this hard for this short amount of time is just it's like a foreign concept to us. Like
yeah. Well, so, it's gonna be a great time, and I think it is very good likelihood after this, maybe sprinkle more of these back into the calendar, because we've been doing so many long course activities, whether it's bike or tri or swim, whatever it might be. I think it might be a good idea to throw a couple of the Olympic distance in. It's almost like we've talked about with full Ironman and full marathon training. It's like those are great. Really enjoy doing those types of events, but they take such a huge commitment to do them. And you can sprinkle in sprints. You can put this kind of effort in, take a day off to recover, and then come right back into your training routine and not have to worry about it too much. So I think throwing these types of activities in, there's going to be a great move forward, and opens up a different level of fitness.
Yeah, I also like to put those in just to remind my self that we got to do these ultra hard things, because I do feel that, like, yes, for the longer distance stuff, we kind of get in a groove, and then your body kind of adapts to these long efforts, and it kind of like metabolizes sugars, and just it adapts to this. Whereas there's the adaptation for these shorter courses is that your pain tolerance has to go higher, and that's the adaptation. So
yeah, it's interesting, because when you do a VO2 max block or set intervals on the bike, and I relate everything back to the bike, because I think nobody suffers as much as you do on a bike, like even in the run. So I think when you do these VO2 max efforts on the bike, you find yourself over like a 4-week block, if you think about your perceived exertion on week 1 versus week 4, that perception drops dramatically for the same level of effort. And to your point about all it really is yes, you're getting the adaptations in your muscles, but really it's your pain tolerance that you're training there as well, and you're learning to just accept that suffer. And I think that's again back to this whole sprint distance. Like, we suffer on the full and the half distance of these events, but man, it's just a totally different feeling. And we were just in Colorado, and how many times I tell you, it's like, man, I just don't feel like the top end is there because we haven't been training the top end. Everything's
Yeah.
been for long distance stuff. So, you get some of those short, punchy climbs in Colorado. And it's like, man, I got no top end to really hold this and deal with that type of suffering. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun for sure.
Yeah. So, and then, with short course, we always go with a sprint and Olympic. And the reason for that is because, really between the half Ironman and full Ironman, nothing really changes as far as like percentage of the distance, so like the swim is almost like a little bit over, 1.5% of the total distance. The bike is basically the same at 80% of the distance. And then the run is the same at 20% of almost 20% of the distance. It's like, 18% of the distance. So those are basically the same at the longer distance. And then the shorter distance, the sprint has the swim is a little bit more impactful at 3%, and then the Olympic is only 2.8% of the total distance. So so what we're talking about here is the sprint, the distance that is the percentage of the distance of the total. Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. The percentage of the total distance is what we're talking about. And the reason I bring this up is because, if you're a really good swimmer, you don't want to swim. I mean, yeah, you can make up time on a half and a full, but you're going to lose that to the bike and the run.
Yeah, I think another way to say that, so just kind of going back to the numbers you said there, if you're talking about a sprint distance, like roughly the swim, I think you said it's about 3% of the total distance. And on a full Ironman, it's almost half that, like 1.7, 1.5%. And so somebody like myself that's, on a really good day, I might do like, 210 per 100 meter, something like that. And yeah, I'm that bad of a swimmer. It's okay. I'm good with that. I just learned, Travis. It's okay.
It's all right.
So I got no problem with admitting my pace on the swim, but it's a good example because I might be at a 210 on the swim, and so in a sprint distance, it's going to take me 11-ish minutes to get through a 500 meter swim. On a 4K full Ironman, though, I mean the amount of time that gets opened up, it could be 20 minutes that gets opened up on me on a swim.
Yeah,
and that's okay on some level because guess what? On the bike, a lot of you suckers that are fishing the water, you can't pedal a bike. So guess what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
And so on a full Ironman, and then just saw this last year, how many times? And you're obviously a very good biker too, Travis. So you end up passing all these folks that might just outswim you, but within the first half of the bike, you're passing almost all of them. And I think on the sprint, it's going to be a very similar situation, but because the bike is a lesser percentage of the total distance, and because you only have about 12 miles to make up that time, it's going to be really tough. So I think these types of shorter distances will definitely favor people. They're just a little bit quicker in the water. If they're dramatically quicker, it's obviously going to help. But for me, it's like it always keeps coming back to the dang run. It always comes back to the run, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's if you're kind of a weaker runner like I am, like these sprint and Olympic distance, if you can get out ahead a couple of minutes, I mean, that's enough to hold people off from the run, especially the fast runners, like the guys that like, if I can put, let's say a minute or half, let's see, like 2 minutes in the swim, and then maybe I do another 2 minutes in the bike. Yep. And then, I mean, you're looking at a 5K and I run a 9-minute mile. They got to run almost, 7-minute mile to catch me at the end, so that's, and I can do 7-minute miles if I'm motivated. It's just, that's my top end, like everything. So like if I see somebody coming up to pass me on the last mile or half mile, I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna absolutely bury myself. But the thing is, when I'm on a marathon, I'm not holding a 7-minute mile for anybody. Maybe the last half or a quarter mile of the marathon just to get it done.
If you want to know what it looks like when Travis runs a 7-minute mile, just drive down the interstate, look for a semi that blows a tire out and how it just starts wobbling and starts doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it all of a sudden pulls over the side of the road and just falls into a pile. Like, yeah, that's pretty much Travis at 7-minute mile. And I joke because I'm the same way, but it's yeah, again, very average runners here. We're not lighting up the PR machines or world record machines here. So I think it's wild how triathlon skews that way. That if you're able to be 30 seconds to a minute faster than your competition, and again, we're talking at the very average level. I mean, the folks that run 7:30s for a half marathon or marathon pace, yeah, it's going to be really hard to put a minute a mile into your opponents.
Right. They're trying to basically mitigate losses on the whole thing. So they try to exit the swim with the group, and then they have one discipline that they're really kind of good at. And like you're talking like if they're a really world-class runner, they're running, instead of 7-minute miles, they're running maybe 6:45s.
Right.
Or they're running the pointy end of that. And and then so you're talking about making up seconds on every single mile, which over the course of 26 miles, maybe you get a handful of minutes.
Right.
But I mean, that's the elite level. Whereas, us amateurs, like Danny, if you come in and we're running, we swim relatively the same, and we bike relatively the same. If you run, a minute per mile faster than me, I on a full, I would lose almost 30 minutes. Yeah. And then on a half I lose 15.
Yeah.
And then
goes from there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's so kind of translate that then back to the bike. It's like to put that kind of time into your opponent on the bike, the amount of power that you have to put out to generate an additional 3 to 5 miles per hour on a bike is a ridiculous amount of power. I mean, yes, you can be more aero. Yes, there's ways to pick up free speed, but if you're going to try to put another 3 to 5 miles per hour into your opponent, because they're comparable to you on the run, it's really tough to do that. And I mean, quite frankly, you're talking about putting in so much power, you're probably just setting yourself up to blow up on the run.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I just go back to, it's so wild how triathlon is skewed to the run, even though if you just look at the numbers, it doesn't look like it is. But I mean, no matter how you cut this thing, if you can run a in that 7 to 7:30 pace, you're probably going to be in the top of the pack, even if you're just a very average swimmer and biker, or maybe even below average. It's just crazy. So.
Yeah, because the power output required is a squared function, because it's basically off of your coefficient of drag, which is surface area. So you can get more aero and reduce your CDA, but you can only do that to a point, unless you're a world class. I mean, you could be have a world class CDA, which is fine, and you have to put out minimum watts. But to go from, once you reach a certain speed, to go from, 22 miles an hour to 23 requires almost double the power that it went from 21 to 22.
Right. So
you have to it's this doubling of power to get further and further, to get faster and faster. So, when you see, big guys like me, we have big power. Like I have quite a bit of power that I can put out to go as fast as I do. Sure. But then I ask you all the time, and Danny's, basically like almost half of me.
Not quite. I've enjoyed a few desserts here recently. I'm not sure about that.
But I ask him I'm like, what's your power? It's almost 100 watts less than me.
Yeah, on some
some days, and we
were riding. It's funny you say that, because we were riding just the other day on that group ride, and you were on the TT bike. I was on my road bike, and I got into your draft, and we were going, I think, 26 miles an hour, roughly 26, 27. And, I had to put in a pretty significant effort to get back onto your wheel, because you flew by me, because we were playing bikes. And so I got into your draft though. And my wattage was 100 watts less than you. and I was just cruising. I was enjoying a nice free tow at 26 miles an hour. And then when I came around beside you and I started stacking up power next to you, it's like, we're back to the normal 30 to 40 watt difference between you and I. And it's amazing. Like you say, yes, you can reduce that drag to a certain point, but I mean, once you get to that point or anywhere close to it, it still comes down to, you got to put a bunch of power out if you're going to go faster. And it's wild. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially like if you're a bigger guy like me, you're like 100 kilos or whatever, like getting as many aerodynamic advantages as you possibly can is huge.
Yeah.
Because you're just punching a big hole in the air.
Yeah.
So, I wear a aero tri-kit, and then you get a aero helmet that you can possibly that fits you well and looks and basically meshes to your from your head to your shoulders and doesn't create a pocket and stuff there. So like every aero advantage that you can get, you need to especially if you want to do well in triathlon, is definitely take advantage of it. For the smaller guys, if you're a little bit, if you're on the smaller side, like maybe, I don't know, 70 kilos or whatever, 60, 65 kilos, like you're a, super skinny rail, you're probably not going to be biking that fast. I mean, you'll be biking fast because you're light and your watts per kilo is going to be low, but really where you're going to excel is the run.
Yeah, well, you might be biking fast. I think what you're saying is you won't have to put out that same high power output to get to that speed. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of those folks that are in that 65, 70 kilo range are punching a much bigger or a much smaller hole of a pocket into the air. And so their CDA, it's a lot easier to get it down, and they just naturally more efficient because of that. But the flip side of that is they aren't putting out the big power. So if it happens to be a windy day or anything like that, all of a sudden, or if it's a really flat course, all of a sudden the power starts to matter. I mean, if it's a little bit rolling, they might get an advantage. But if it's a flat course or it's windy, those light guys are going to be, paying the price a little bit on the bike. But yeah, you're right. They're all going to make it up on the run because they're probably going to be a little quicker. There aren't many 60 to 65 kilo guys that are slower than me. I'll just put it
unless they have some kind of like debilitating knee injury or something like that, where like they only run once a year and it's when they do these events. Because I mean, when you think about it, running is you're generating about 4 times the force of gravity. So like for every kilo that I'm overweight, that's 4 extra kilos that I'm putting through the lower half of my body that my muscles have to absorb, my bones have to absorb, the tendons have to stretch for, and it just makes it harder. And I'm not, it's
what it is.
It is what it is. And we're, I'll work on my weight for the next season. I mean, that's what we'll talk about this, in an upcoming podcast, but like making those off-season goals and that's the time to really work on body composition. So, but
yeah, so I think again, kind of going back on the whole sprint Olympic versus the long course stuff. Again, I think to summarize, it is going to come back down to the run for us, for people like us. I do think it's interesting too. So, the sprint, would you say the sprint typically has more like beginners or say the lesser experience, or you think it's still a pretty good mix of, hey, you got a lot of experienced people that just want to try to go fast and get it done?
So you have the introductory level people, and then you have like the super experienced. So there's not too many average. So like me and you will probably
fit somewhere in between that.
We'll probably filter into the top. Like I would say it wouldn't be out for us to be, top 10.
Yeah, just because the bike and the run will tear the newer folks down. Like they might be decent at the swim, but they're going to struggle maybe. And then
the guys that are faster than us, they're going to be faster than us in all disciplines. So they're going to, they're going to swim. I would be lucky to, just be able to see them get out of the water by the time I, make round that first buoy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know about that. And I kind of always thought that too. Like sprint typically has a lot of the beginners, which is great. I mean, that's what you should. Again, I probably broke some rules somewhere doing a half Ironman then a full. So versus starting off with a sprint, I think it's good. I'm interested to see just how some of the times break down. Again, I'm not trying to compare myself because I have no expectations for the race this weekend. It's just we're said it before, we're doing it for because it's a great event, local event, and so I think it's gonna be a unique experience. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the Olympic, I think, is usually what people like who have more, like they've done a sprint before, or maybe they did one earlier in the year and then now they want to go to the longer Olympic course, and they just kind of do that, and that's kind of like where you find like the majority of the average folk. And then especially like we should, I mean, I don't know why it just breaks down that way. I think people are like, well, I just want to do the longer thing. And then, then they're like, oh, I'm going to do a couple Olympics this year. And then next year I'm going to do a half. And then I'm going to do a couple halves after that. And then I'm going to do a full. It's just kind of like their progression after they got onto it. A lot of times, many people don't come back to the short courses because they're like, well, I just do that on a, how many times have I said like, oh, that's just a Tuesday.
Just a Tuesday.
Yeah. When I, swim, bike, and run. And it's just like, you get kind of used to doing that, but nobody races it. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I do it in training. Like I'll swim, bike, and run on a Tuesday and it'll be roughly the sprint distance or a little bit longer. And like, but I don't race that. Yeah. I'm just training, you know, like maybe one of those sessions is a hard session. Like maybe the swim is hard and then I, have a recovery bike and then it's just an easy base run. Yeah. But it's not like, going out there and doing the hard swim, hard bike, hard run.
Right.
So
I do think it comes back to that balance of pain and suffering to the time you're out there. And so, you can shorten the time you're out there, but it's going to hurt a lot more. Or I can say, you know what, I'll just do a 10K and I'll back off the pace to something a little more, because I got to, it's a 10K. I got to make sure I get there. Yeah. So I'm going to back off the pace and make it a little more comfortable. And then, I think it's natural. People are like, I'll just do the Olympic because, I don't have to kill myself in a short course, feel the pressure to kill myself in a short course. And, we say the same thing about a half marathon versus the marathon, right? It's like, we want to do a half because it's just the intensity of the training for a full. It takes just so much more to do it.
Yeah, just the time. It just the time just to get the base fitness is the hardest part.
Well, and most experienced, most people, I shouldn't say experienced, most people who take training as, it's what I do I train every week for this many hours. I have a set schedule. I mean, the fitness is there to sort of quote roll off the couch and do an Olympic, or even to do a half. I mean, the fitness is there. So to just amp up to do the race isn't really too much more, and doesn't take a lot of prep. So it's a lot easier to do those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to say that like most people can fit like 6 hours of training a day. That's like 1 hour every day.
A week.
Yeah. You're 6 hours a week. Yeah. I was like, sorry, not a day. Sorry, like, my bad.
I'd love to train 6 hours a day. I don't have that kind of time in my schedule.
I don't think my body would take it. But 6 hours a week. So for most people that's an achievable goal. And then you look at like, okay, well, and athletes ask me all the time, like how much do I have to train to be like, to do a half Ironman? And I'm like, that's almost just 9 hours a week. Yeah. Which is not much than what you were doing. It's just a little bit more focused. Yep. And then, and we've seen this with, you and me and Serena and everybody else that's done full Ironmans. It's 14 to 20 hours a week. So you're taking that 6 hours a week that let's say you normally slice out of your schedule. Now you're tripling that. And you're just like, you're exhausted. You're tired. You're, all you do is sleep, eat, train. and
Pretty much.
then you do your job, and you try not to screw that up because you're so tired. So it's like,
there's truth in
that longer stuff. And it's the same thing with the marathon. Like, we were talking about it, this weekend, like doing a half is, we can easily make our run volume so that our long runs are 2 hours. Well, that's almost half Iron or half marathon distance.
Yeah.
Whereas I can only run, like, my philosophy is that you should never run more than 3 hours. Well, that's still not a marathon distance. That's
Right.
just 3 hours of running. And usually it's like anywhere from 18 to 20 miles.
Right.
So it's just like, you're still not there,
Yeah. And I think that's exactly it. I mean, just the time commitment, it's not a linear scale as much as you would think it would be. And yeah, that time commitment between the half and the full is dramatically different. I was looking at my training so far this year. I mean, I think on average, getting anywhere from 12 to 15 hours a weekend on most weeks. I mean, of course, recovery weeks and things like that, we drop back a little bit, but yeah, 12 to 15 hours. But, again, we've been doing a lot of long course stuff, and I think it would be interesting if we did a 4 or 6 week block and focus, say, like on a sprint Olympic distance, but the intensity amps up. So maybe, you might only do 7 to 9 hours of training a week, but the intensity ratchets up pretty fast. And it'd be interesting to see, because I'd be willing to bet we'd probably get a bump of fitness out of that, of sustainable fitness and sustainable speed on a longer course because of just changing that time and intensity factor for your training. Because I think you hit a point where your body it's adapted, and you've got to give it some new stimulus. And I think that's why I'm really interested to see how the sprint feels, because it may make me start thinking, hey, maybe we ought to throw like a block in there real quick before we get into the down season, so to speak. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's good. And then maybe like I say, and the thing with these sprint and Olympic stuff is that it's so short. It's that your breakfast has got to be pretty much timed out. Where you take a goo or not take a goo, or any of that kind of stuff. It plays a role, because with the sprint you can kind of get away with not really eating. During the thing. Right. So I mean, like, you're looking at like an hour to 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Yeah, maybe you hit
a gel or something in there. Yeah.
But I mean, Olympic, you're looking at like a little over 2 hours. So you're probably going to eat something on the bike, like a goo or whatever. Like, there's a little bit more pacing that's involved in Olympic. But yeah, so.
Yeah. I'm thinking a couple of things in there, like on the sprint for this weekend. I'm thinking, probably just a little bit of nutrition in my bottle on the bike. I'm just going to have a very small water bottle on the bike, and I'll probably have a goo that I'll slam, like, just as I'm coming into transition off the bike. And that way I have it, hopefully through me as I get into that first mile, and, heart rate's at, max heart rate, but it's I know, man, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know. I mean, it may just be, we'll see how long that holds up. But yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, nutrition really isn't a huge factor on the sprint side. As long as you have a decent breakfast, a good meal the night before, your glycogen's going to be there. But it's going to be
definitely
fun.
The days leading up, making sure you're
topped up.
You're topped up, packing everything in that you can, and then, especially if you're treating it seriously, for you and me, I think we'll probably just end up doing our normal routine, and then just
show up.
We just have to wake up a little bit earlier on a Sunday.
I know. So the last thing I'd say is, and we don't need to spend a lot of time here, but I think that because the sprint distance is so short, I think the transition time is going to be really important too, because it becomes a bigger percentage of the overall race time. And so, if you can't be spending 7 minutes in transition like you do on a full Ironman, right? Changing clothes and everything else.
Full kit change.
But I know 7 minutes on a full, probably some people are probably laughing at that, like, oh my gosh, I do it in 2.5. But it's like, that's okay. I think that for this one, it's like, you start to see why people do silly things like, I'm gonna ride with no socks and run with no socks. Oh,
that's the question, Danny. Are you gonna go socks or no socks?
Oh, it's socks all the way. And I Yeah.
Nope,
See, I know.
not for a sprint. I'm going sockless.
I know what you're doing. But but I look at it as, you know what? It's gonna take 10 seconds to put socks on. I'm not that worried about it. All
right.
The hardest part will be my road bike shoes, because I don't have.
Oh yeah, you don't have tri shoes like I do.
Shoes. No. Yeah. So the hardest part will be getting the road bike shoes on there, and then and all that stuff. But one last thing on this course, I know, because I've volunteered there a few times. I've sat and watched people. How many people? I wish somebody should count this, and we should do an over under. How many people will have their TT bike in the wrong gear trying to start up that little hill, and they'll fall over, or it'll be a disaster. I mean, there's going to be a total cluster of bikes and people and bodies just scattered across because they won't have their bike in the right gear to get up this. It's not even that big of a hill, but it's just enough that a lot of newbies have a hard time with it. So
yeah, so that's another one of my tips that I give athletes is if you can, ride your bike out of transition and find the gear that you're going to use out of transition. If not, my thing is it's better to start off too easy than too hard. So you can always, So I mean, you just, and my role has always been usually for me, and I always tell my athletes this too, is when you're set it up in transition, your bike should be in the small ring up front and about whatever gearing that you think you need in the back. Yeah. So don't leave it in the big ring up in the front. There's just, you're not going to be coming sprinting off the line, you're not
doing a big gear sprint here.
And my thing, especially for longer courses like half Ironmans, is I'll wait for the first 5 to 10 minutes and be in the small ring in the beginning.
Sure.
Because that's I kind of need my hips to warm up and my body to warm up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once my body comes around, shift to the big ring and then start, going away. You have a lot of course to, and it's not sure, I get past, my maybe 5 or 6 people,
right,
but I reel those guys back in by the middle of the course.
Yeah.
It's not
a big deal.
It's better to have that, a good warm up and a good exit on transition, because I've seen people, and I've made this mistake early on, where you just kind of mash it and you're just using all your muscle, and the next thing you know, you pay for that. You pay for that in the run.
That's right.
So,
well, it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. Knock this first sprint out, and then I guess I still have to cross an Olympic off the list at some point. But I tell you, it's going to be a great time. And we didn't mention, and not intentionally, we didn't mention the name of the triathlon. It's the Cowboy Up Triathlon, Matt Mason Memorial. It's again a great event here in Kansas City. It's been sold out, I think, for a few weeks now, and maybe a few months now. And I think it's the last year of the event. So sad to see that this is the last year. But
this is the last year for it. One of the few local events. This is probably when I first did it. When I moved here, it still and is always will be the coolest event. They have
great support for the event.
Yeah, great support. They have special forces guys come in. They parachute into the event the day of the race.
Yeah.
They parachute in, they land, they change clothes, and they freaking go and do a triathlon. A lot of them they don't live here. They're just coming in because they knew Matt Mason from the
service.
Army and the service and stuff. And so they parachute in, they use a borrowed bike that they probably got fitted on very haphazardly, and then they go and they do this event.
Yeah.
Their, in whatever kit they're doing. So
they'll still destroy my time no matter what.
Oh yeah.
Because
that's probably who's going to pass us the most.
That's right. So anyway, well, looking forward to it, man. It's going to be a great time. So.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So that's about all I got.
All right.
So Suffer complete. Nice job.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please, if you like what we are doing here, leave a like, rate us, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. It really helps us grow and finds us more SufferSooner squad mates. And remember, when the finish line feels impossibly far away, we don't give up, we push harder, we dig deeper, and we find solace in the knowledge that our suffering is temporary and our resilience is forever.